Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe. Hey everybody, thank you for listening to another experience of Me and Paranormal You. This is your buddy Ryan Singer. We're getting close to 700 episodes, and I'm never surprised by how just fun and interesting the conversations continue to be, because I get to meet all these really fucking incredible people. Pete and I are both trying to wake up and figure out what life is truly about.
Yeah, I still don't
Today.
know.
Yeah, I still don't know. So I got the Blue Collar Spiritualist with me today. Mutual friends abound between you and I. And we're going to be at Hot Alien Summer Camp this August together, in somewhere in Tennessee.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
like Lebanon, Tennessee, I think it
yeah,
is.
and so that's going to be, a ton of fun. I mean, who knows? Maybe I don't think we're all gonna just get, zapped up into the sky, but I mean, you just
You
really
never
never.
know. You never know. I mean, I went there last year and taught a mediumship class there. I'm not really a fan of communities in a sense, like I just feel like it always gets corrupted. Like whatever from like churches I was in, just any organization, it's like it always gets into politics and it's like but like I went there and it was cool. I met a lot of cool people, hooked up with a lot of people that I still am friends with and kind of like share stories with. But it's basically just like, all the weird shit, aliens, mediumship, healing, energetic stuff. It's comedy. You guys are going to be there. Food, music. It's a cool time. I had a really good time last year, so
Well, that's
coming
cool.
back.
That's awesome.
And I think I'm thinking I'm teaching. Yeah, I just completed like an online mediumship course for people. It's like an introduction course. You don't have to have any prior learning or anything like that. It's kind of the basics of how to communicate with spirit, how to receive information, how to connect. And, I'm a firm believer that it's not really a gift that anybody can do it. It's just learning to become aware of how to do it and, not having your prior expectations based off of our culture and social media and TV and stuff. Like you're programmed to believe like certain things and it's really mediumship is much more a inherent ability than people think. It's really just learning how to, to me, basically mediumship is really like communicating with your imagination. Or I mean, that's kind of how I interpret it.
Oh, okay. The sorry, I don't know if you saw me, but there's something like just happened on the other side of this wall that sounded like somebody just threw a dead body. I was like, what the fuck just happened?
They're coming for you.
Yeah, they are, right? It's interesting. I mean, you and I are aligning already on a couple different things. Like I agree with you about like the community aspect sometimes makes me very nervous. And, because especially if people start throwing around words of like, special and chosen ones and then it always ends up in an apocalypse of some kind that they've got information about. Which, just being raised Catholic and years ago, and it's like, okay, yeah, I know this story.
Yeah.
And there's usually like one really special person and his name was Jesus. Okay, so who's Jesus here, right?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But um the and I don't know if it's just like, how it's making me wonder, like the natural evolution of things, how things just occur. Like, is it possible for, and I'm sure it is, for, large groups of people to get together and there not be that evolution of someone? I mean, because I guess we all need leaders. You hear that phrase a lot. And, once you become a community that's too large, it is just impossible to have like a vote from everybody on every single issue and thing. And that's like kind of where we are in our culture now, because the village has gotten way too big to be able to vote on every last thing, or we'd never sleep and we'd just be voting all day long about every tiny thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the what's the intention of a community in a sense is how it attracts its leaders, you know? So it's like I love America. I'm never gonna not say I don't love America. Maybe I'm brainwashed a little bit, but like I love America, or I love the what America represents idealistically, you know? Of course it has its issues. I'm not saying it's like perfect and I don't have this blind love, but the problem is like it's like anything. It's like capitalism. Yeah, the idea of capitalism, it drives competition. It might make things better in some sense, but also like the intention of capitalism is to make money, so like eventually it gets to a point where that's the bottom line and you flow to the top. So it's like what's the Catholic Church's secret intent, like, so you're going to attract those types of leaders. I think the community has to start with like a pure intention of, and then like there's a chance of it attracting leaders that will kind of encompass that intention, you know?
Yeah.
But it's hard to find that, like
Yeah,
where are you going to find that?
and and I have no intention of you know, trying to find a leader like that. I mean it seems like a fool's game almost in a certain way, but it intention seems to be, a such a big part, right? And in whether we trace intention back to just consciousness and manifestation and like the connectivity of all things in a certain way. And I want to kind of tie this back and circle back into this idea of imagination and mediumship, and how everyone can do this. And I'm curious about how it became something that you discovered, that you were able to do, as far as this journey, your personal journey that you're going on. And you know let me say it like this, instead of having a 2.5 minute question with a bunch of windy roads. uh on your personal journey of what came first for you, understanding and discovering your ability for mediumship, uh or tapping into and understanding the power of intention and your imagination?
Um, well, I guess it's kind of, I think like I don't know if it was just my nature, but I always thought like things seemed off, like there was like this layer that you felt but weren't totally aware of, whether that's like psychic stuff, whether it's just like a feeling of something around you, or like an awareness of an awareness outside yourself. um but I think like I mean I always remember like having super weird dreams about things, of like knowing things, or like having receiving information from something outside of myself in dreams. Um, Actually, I remember meeting people in dreams and then meeting them in real life like 10 years later, and them having like a significant moment in my life. Also, like, I think I just remember meditating. Like, I didn't even know what I was doing when I was a kid, just like
Like
sitting and listening to music. I used to always listen to The Doors. This is the
roughly, oh
end.
my god, this is so funny. How old were you when
Like like 13, 12, you know?
I I was just listening for the first time in forever. It was late last night. I'm driving home from something, and a friend of mine, has all these syncs with the song Spanish Caravan with the Doors. And so I was like, God, I still haven't like just really sat here and listened to this song. So I listened to it last night on a very short drive. And so then today, driving down here and everything, I'm just listening to the Doors all day. And I'm just like, I really like, I always liked the door. I'm like, it can be uncool to like the Doors in certain like really like cool, culture pockets, I guess. But
Yeah.
the people who are really snobby about music, I guess. But I'm just jamming out to the Doors today. And now
It's
we're
just like
talking.
Jim Morrison, dude. Like, I don't care what anyone says about snobby music. Like, just like his persona and like he was so cool. Like, who could like the Lizard King? Like, how
Yeah,
could you
I
say
mean,
he's not cool? You know?
and I don't, I'm with you 100%. And it's, it's not his fault he was so cool. And,
Yeah,
it's not his fault he was so cool and put himself out there in a way, and it worked. And, they became successful. There's obviously some kind of magic happening there. And, a combination of charisma, he's tapped into something that's going on in the zeitgeist. And the music, and coming together with friends who also are very talented musically, that makes something that for whatever reason it clicks. And music to me is one of the most fascinating things, because I just don't, and I'll never maybe fully understand why when you hear certain music it rubs your brain the right way, if that
yeah.
makes sense.
No,
And
yeah. I mean, like to me, like music is probably like one of the greatest keys to moments, you know? It's like I could listen to certain songs and it brings you to that like Sublime when I was in high school, like Summer, Sublime, like you I could hear Sublime and I could go back to like drinking with my friends on the beach when I was in high school, like like or even like Emotion, like Eminem like represents probably like the anger in my high school years. Like you could hear it and you could feel like the emotion and the passion in his music. And he has that like anger, like punching sheetrock walls when you're like going through puberty. Like there's so many, and even like love song. Any song. It really like speaks to your soul. You know.
yeah, for sure. And so you're like 13 roughly, and you don't even know what you're doing. You're just listening to music and kind of like zoning out, meditating without realizing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well, I always thought like, you know, when you're young, you don't really understand death,
Mm.
like, and I could remember like the first time somebody like close to me died and it like hit me that we could die, you know? And then it like, it kind of spirals you into this like, well, for me, it like kind of spiraled me into like the existentialness of death and like what does it represent, like where do we go after this? And I think like it goes back to how we were talking about intention. It's like if you have a thought that's like overwhelming your mind, it's like it naturally causes it to like come into your environment. So like if that's something that like some people might think about death and it's just like, obviously every human thinks about death, but it's like I want to know the bottom of it.
Mm.
Like where, what's behind the door, And so I think kind of my personality of being obsessed with like a thought, it kind of pulls the information into my reality in any form. So if I'm sitting when I was 16, 15, listening to Jim Morrison, I remember always like some reason I always got obsessed with like looking at my hands while I meditated because it just like it's like it felt like I wasn't part of me was never here. I don't know how to explain it better than that. It's like there was a part of me that's outside of my
Huh.
body, you know?
Well, that is interesting, because there's I I'm trying to remember specifically, because it's the I think it's The New Earth and the Power of Now, the books by Eckhart Tolle,
Yeah.
or I think, I don't know. I think that's how you say his name. And they're one of the keys to trying to be like hyper present. I don't know if you've read these books. Maybe
I've
you have.
heard some of it. Like I think, I'm familiar
Yeah.
with them.
Well, one of the keys to one of like the first steps into becoming like present in the moment, right, is to you start with your fingertips, like
Mm.
or your toes, but or in like you try to just be hyper aware of feeling in your hands, essentially, kind of like what you're talking about in a weird way. So you're kind of naturally, experiencing this thing, that is, in my mind, for whatever reason, it's making me think it seems very closely related to, because I think when we're actually able to anchor firmly into the present moment, that's when we can really just do we can really make anything happen, right? um or that's when we're like granted access to the magic of the world around us,
Yeah.
potentially. And so it sounds like, so it's like your hands, not like that you physically weren't all here, but a kind of a combination of material and immaterial not all here. Is that what you're describing?
Yeah, I mean it's like one of the steps I talk about in terms of mediumship, right? Is the ability to feel spirit, right? So if I tell you to like feel a wet sponge in your mind, can you do it?
Yeah, and I mean, not only that, but it's got that shit. This needs to be microwaved because it's got that stink
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
it.
Well, you can smell it too. That's extra.
Yeah,
That's
you get that like, ah, shit, now I gotta wash my hands after washing the
yeah,
dishes. Like, this seems so
yeah.
weird. Why do I
Yeah.
hit? Yeah.
But like, so sometimes people can't feel, right? So what I tell them to do is I say, take your hand and put it on anything, right? If you put it on your lap, right? You put it on your leg, and I tell you to feel your leg, right? If you think about it, it's not really your hand feeling it. It's your brain. It's your nervous system. So like your hand has your is on your leg, but really if you feel into it, you could almost feel your nervous system traveling from your hand up your arm, up your shoulder, up your neck to your brain.
Okay, you're freaking me out here because I'm doing this, and as I'm doing this, I I had that moment right before you said it where I was just like, oh yeah, that's not my hand. And then also I had a fucking intense deja vu.
Yeah.
So this is okay. So let's get back to this, because this is, I'm doing this as you're talking about. I've got my hand on my leg, and you it's like you feel the energy kind of zapping everywhere, right?
Yeah, so like all that spirit does, I mean, the point I was kind of getting to with the hand is that it's like, you know, you're feeling your hand, even if you're meditating, even if you're not doing the mediumship stuff. It's like the more you become aware of yourself, I feel like the more you become aware of everything around you,
Hmm.
you know? And you notice when you notice the subtleties of yourself, you notice the subtleties of your environment, you know? And then it kind of just give, I think awareness is the key with everything. It's like the more you become aware, the more you have like a deeper understanding of things. And then I think that deeper understanding leads you into a more non-dualistic view of reality. Because what happens is it like, to me everything happens in like layers of our consciousness. Like there's the energetic layer, there's this emotional layer, and then there's like the physical layer. So it's like once you understand things on like a spiritual level, it starts to kind of manifest in different layers, and then like your reality starts to reflect that. And you understand things. Like I always use the like even like political views you can understand. It's like you look at guns. That's like the worst subject to talk about, but like when you look at it from a non-dualistic view, it's like on both sides people really have the same essence of what they want. Like they both think it's their form of safety. But I know I'm going off
No,
on tangents because my
that makes
mind is like,
100 that makes 100% to me. Sense.
so
Um,
like I think people think it's separate, but I think everything is one.
you
And
know what I'm
it
seeing
depends.
when when you say that, I know exactly what you're saying, because I'm seeing this seed of safety, right? This image came to my mind so clearly when you're describing this. This is fucking, I love what you're saying here. It's a seed of safety, and the plant grows up through from the spiritual through the levels of consciousness, right? And then as it gets into the physical manifestation, it's branched out into two different, seemingly totally different and opposite, like branches or plants. One's like anti and one's pro. Little do they know they're coming from that same seed on that like spiritual level, right? Is
Yeah,
that
so
kind of
then yeah, so then when you work with your own awareness, what happens is as you work through yourself, you start to see everybody from the same view, from the spiritual energy instead of seeing them from the physical reflection. I know, like, I don't know, I feel like I don't make sense sometimes, but it's just like my own inner dialogue, and I just like talk it out until it makes sense, you
I mean,
know?
I think you're describing why I started this podcast almost 10 years ago. Like, I'm just going to
Yeah.
talk about this shit out loud until hopefully it makes sense
Yeah.
to me and maybe even other people. Um, no, I do think what you're saying makes sense. And not only do I think it makes sense, but I want there's a I think there's a more important thing about what you're saying. And I'm doing the old radio trick here where we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back we're going to talk about what I think is maybe one of the biggest things we could even talk about. We're going to be right back. Oh, by the way, no ads if you go to patreon.com/Ryan Singer, $3 a month. That's less than the coffee I bought today. um patreon.com/Ryan Singer, plus other good stuff. And we're back. We are chatting about some really big stuff here today. Where we're getting into some big stuff, and we're talking about this idea that once you're operating from a spiritual level, let me see if I can kind of synthesize this, that you see everyone, you see everyone from that, and you see everyone kind of as being similar, even if they have like disparate views. Like, even if you're like, I would never even sit in a room with this person, it's like, well, once you can get past, that's a very dualistic way of looking at human beings, right?
Yeah.
And I think like the biggest thing you're talking about, or when it comes to this viewpoint that we're discussing, is it's just, it's like this power of connection. And it truly, for me, is the only way we make it. It's the only way we survive. It's the only way we move forward. In this, whether it's through space and time as a species, like for me, it's that big of a concept. What you've tapped into here, because without it, we're doomed. It feels like, and doomed is a big word, and I'm very dramatic sometimes, but um, it's it seems to me that this is, if not the way to do it, it is one of the most effective ways for us to be able to move past like all of the pain and anger that we face and that we allow ourselves to get wrapped up in.
Yeah, I mean, I like people always kind of looked at mediumship to me, or what I've observed is like a lot of people look at it as like separate from like a path to enlightenment, you know, for some reason. I don't know why,
Mm.
but I always looked at it as like, I think the first thing as a human being that you should kind of work on, this is my opinion, I'm not a guru or whatever, but I think is your fear of death, you know? I think death is terrifying, you know, because you don't know, especially for the ego, it's like you don't know if you're even going to exist anymore, you know? So it's a definitely a terrifying thing. So I think if you look at your own death, or that's your own journey, but to me, I actually had psychedelic experiences that kind of helped me work through my fear of death, and then the mediumship obviously helped. So I feel like when you look at people in terms of like mediumistically, where you're connecting to spirits, you realize like there's an essence of us that is the same in everybody, you know? Everybody's going to die. Whether you want to feel that or not, it's a dark thing to say, kind of. It feels like a dark thing to say, like, listen, we're all going to die, you know? But I mean, I think there's like a connection in that when you like connect to thousands of spirits all the time, like over my lifetime, I don't know how many I've connected to, but there's always like patterns, there's always like similarities with like what people need to feel and need to hear. So I think there's an aspect of mediumship that really can help you work on your evolution just by feeling that like commonality amongst people, you know? It's not just a woo-woo thing, to connect to spirit. It's, you see the humanity in everybody because everybody misses somebody, like even in grief, it's like everybody's had somebody who passed that meant a lot to them or like served them in life. So it's like, you can see even the people that you might not want to connect to, like you don't want to spend a minute in a room with them, but like you can see their humanity when they're missing and loving and yearning to connect to somebody that they miss. So I feel like that's a big aspect that can really serve us in a sense.
Yeah. And I used to say like, oh, it's so much easier to hate somebody and you don't know them. And because it becomes a lot more difficult to hate somebody once you know them, or it becomes a lot easier, right? It's the joke.
Yeah.
But truly, and kind of what I'm hearing is it's like once you understand that maybe you kind of do know everybody, right? Even if you don't know them, even if you don't think you know them, but we're talking like on this energetic spiritual level. And we do know each other. We have these commonalities. We have these patterns. Like when I talk to, people who work in this field all the time, like giving people readings and, consultations and stuff. And it's, there's usually like the big three things, like it's health, relationships, money. And I think it's kind of been, some variation of that for a long, long time when people are looking for seeking some kind of counsel, even more than answers. I think they kind of want to be heard potentially,
Yeah.
um, but it is interesting. Like when you said patterns, it really just kind of resonated for me, and in trying to have a better understanding of this big journey we're all on, which I think you're right goes back to confronting and understanding and moving past the fear of death.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think everybody's a little scared,
And it's
like,
okay, right? And it's
no, I
okay.
mean, like, it's funny because, like, I, I, my mom, I was raised by a mother who, like, her father died when she was a kid, and she was always, like, anxious, you know, and as a result of that, and I always used to say to her, it's like, she was always overly anxious. It's like, you don't think I'm scared? Like, I'm scared all the but like, you can let that consume you or you can work through it. And it's always, I think it's always, work through it, right? Like you don't want to limit yourself. But it's like everybody, I always used to say to her, like, you don't think everybody's a little scared, you know? Do you think there's somebody who's walking around that's not scared a little bit? Like, and that could be about anything, their financial security, the world at large, their job, their health. It's like there's always these common themes of like, that's why I'm saying you can really relate to anybody in terms of like deep down, everybody has a little fear of something.
Yeah, is there
I
something
think
in
it's
my teeth?
only, yeah, I think it's only natural, like, to be in this reality and have these physical experiences. Like, that's the whole point of this meat suit, to pick up feelings and feel things. I mean, I don't.
That is, I love that though. Like, you don't, I mean, everybody is a little bit scared. And, I think oftentimes just knowing that fact, it's, and I'm not, man, 20 years ago, I was huge into the conspiracy theory world and stuff like that. But, um, it's just a lot of darkness being swallowed by that world. And at least for me, it was. And
Yeah.
there's obviously people who understand exactly this truth, right? And knowing that every single person alive is a little bit scared. And ultimately, it goes back to death, the fear of death. That can be used as a thing to, I don't know, manipulate or control people into certain, actions and behaviors, right? And like, so what we're talking about really is kind of breaking free from the strings
Yeah.
and, finding our freedom and embracing the fact that, first of all, it's okay. We're all, this is one of those
Yeah.
patterns, right? We're all a little bit fucking scared. And some of us, and well, all of us manifest that, and it manifests itself in so many different ways. And then, but there's so much power in being able to take control of it, or at least trying to work through it. And we can see that play out by, like, when people talk about like the puppet masters and they're using fear to control you, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's just, they get it. They understand that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because like I was I think part of a spiritual awakening is you have to go through the whole conspiracy phase, you
Yeah.
know? And I think I was, younger. I was into this stuff kind of younger. I don't know, like when I was a kid, I was always reading like ghosts, occult books, those type of things. And I went through this whole phase of like, reading William Cooper, like the Behold the Pale Horse is like the Bible of the conspiracy. I don't know if you ever read that. But and then like you realize that really all it does is make you angry because it's like it makes you feel less in control and that there's somebody like no matter what you do you're kind of screwed either way because there's people who've been planning this for centuries and stuff like that. And it's funny because I was recently on like Sam Tripoli's podcast and he's conspiracy tinfoil hat all that stuff. And like we were talking about it and I was saying like you know, if you're looking at it in terms of like manifestation, right? And you are saying there's like these powers that control everything, you're adding like the energetic aspect of it, you're adding to the energy of that. So by like even being a conspiracy theorist like podcast, you're feeding society's like energy to believe that there is something that's controlling us or in a higher power. So it's like you're doing their job for them in a sense, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've known Sam for a long time, just from the world of comedy.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
love him. I
and
think he's
yeah,
hilarious. I've
and
just,
but yeah, I mean, and I think he is a guy that's willing to have that conversation too, probably. I mean, I don't know
yeah.
what his response was when you said that, but
No, yeah, we were going back and forth. It was cool.
yeah.
I love him. I love comedy in general. So like I know all like I follow all those types of guys. I just it's I think like the problem with social media and stuff like that is like all these things get fed instead of kind of like I feel like a lot of the stuff is like fed through. It's like anything like ADHD, narcissism, it's like all these things. It's like I have it people don't realize by feeding the energy into that, it's like you're feeding the issue in a sense. Not that you should dismiss everything, but I think like people get so stuck in the identity of these things that it gives it more power.
Yeah,
I don't know.
there definitely seemed to be a period there where if anybody's wronged by anybody, even in the slightest way, the person who wronged them is a narcissist. And, and then, not that a ton of people don't have ADHD.
Yeah.
I mean, I even tried to convince my therapist on a few different occasions that I probably have ADHD,
Yeah.
and maybe Ritalin would be good for, or Adderall would be good for me, and he's just not having it,
Yeah.
But the there is, for me, it's kind of like the chicken or the egg, right? To a certain degree, when it comes to, adding this energy to the thing that is believed, like we're giving power to, in, and like, and I know in like therapy circles, it's like you internalize this thing, this narrative that might not necessarily be true. And even though you know it's not true, and like you're kind of like, you're not gaslighting yourself, but the I do feel the same way. I agree with you about the conspiracy stuff. And because I was like, many years ago, my grandpa used to work for the Air Force, and he was like a lieutenant colonel. And he we lived in Dayton, Ohio, right? Because I mean, he worked at Wright Pat Air Force Base for a long, long time. And so my brother and I just assumed, we knew, like, you're a lieutenant colonel, some stuff that's going on at Wright Pat Air Force Base. The aliens from Roswell, the wreckage was taken to Wright Pat. Like, let's, you're in your 80s. Let's
Yeah.
have an extra martini and maybe start telling us some stuff, right?
Did you get anything?
No, and he would always just kind of laugh, and then, but and we'd talk about chemtrails to him, and he was like an engineer. And I can't remember what he said, but this was 15 years ago, probably, right? At least. And when we brought up the idea of chemtrails to him, and he's like, okay, let's sit down and talk about this idea of chemtrails. And then he just basically explained aeronautics to us in a very simple, kind of quick way. And how, all these like claims and things are just, well, let me tell you why this is not accurate, and isn't what happening, just scientifically with these airplanes and stuff. And then I realized, like, oh yeah, so we're poison, all the Illuminati, New World Order, they're poisoning the air that they are also breathing. Are they just wearing gas masks all the time?
Yeah.
Like if we're seeding the air with all this poison, do they have like a vaccine, a secret vaccine they've injected themselves with? Because it's like, this is the same air. And then I was just
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I gotta just stop. And then I kind of
Yeah.
slowly but surely started pulling myself out of the rabbit hole. But
Because it's not serving you. Like, what is it doing? Like, it's not like you're gaining a benefit to me. Like, that's how I looked at it, is like, what is it doing for me except making me like angry that I feel powerless?
yeah,
And then like think about it, even in terms of like manifestation and energetics, it's like you're putting the energy out there that you feel powerless, so then everything in your reality is going to start to reflect that. So that, and that doesn't even mean like conspiracy stuff, like maybe you start to feel more powerless at your job, maybe you feel powerless in your relationships, and people don't understand that effect, you know that I try to at
it's all
least
encompassing.
share.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean, I
interesting.
went through it. Like, I know what it feels like, So it's like, I think I just tell people how I felt, and I try to share what I feel. And then if it works for you, it works for you. Like, I don't know. But I mean, like, a lot of things I start, like, even if you want to dive into the conspiracy stuff, right? This is something that I always think about. I think that naturally everybody, even if it's not this lifetime, even if you believe in multiple lifetimes, I think the goal of our consciousness is to evolve to a higher level, right? Would you agree with that statement?
I 100% would. Yeah.
Okay, so if there's these beings that are outside of, say, the earth, like, say, reptilian beings that are coming here to mess with us or whatever.
And consume, live off our black goo.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever. So, like, I would assume if these beings have been around longer, wouldn't they naturally be more evolved than us? Or
I
no?
I want I mean, I 100% believe that if you're a being that can travel through space time, you are not over here being like, let's harvest their children. I
Well,
think,
that's what
like,
I'm saying. So,
yeah,
like, that,
100%.
I try to look at things with, like, you know, critical thinking. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that some being that is more evolved with us scientifically wouldn't be more evolved emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. So that never made sense to me. So, like, that point right there always like stuck in my head as like, it doesn't make sense. So then, like, where is this coming from? And I would say it has to come from our own psyche. Like we have the shadow in us that has this fear that something is trying to control us, or that even like in terms of like, I don't know if you got into like Gnosticism at all, or the belief that this is like Gnostics kind of believe that this is like a prison,
Yeah.
like Earth.
And yeah, and you can't, and you can only escape through death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like if you look at that, like break that down, what does that really mean? To me, it means that like the core of that is that essentially we're God. We're spiritual beings. It's the physical body that is the prison. And I think we feel that. Like I think deep down there's a part of us that knows there's a greater aspect of us, you
Yeah.
know? But I mean, it's going to manifest in certain ways. So like maybe the feeling of that manifests as feeling like something's controlling us, or like even aliens. I've been thinking about aliens a lot because they just I don't know, something just doesn't sit right with me with them. And I was recently reading about like Carl Jung, and like he said that he believed that aliens are just like, or UFOs are kind of a manifestation of like the collective unconscious urge to have like a higher power intervene with us, and like these sightings and these experiences are really just like our collective unconscious manifesting. And he talks about like UFO sightings really started happening around World War I, and it was because the fear of like our annihilation was there. So like he kind of connects that together. And it's like even today, like UFO sightings are spiking out of nowhere, and like the government saying there's UFOs and all this stuff. And what's going on in our world right now? We have a pandemic, we have war, we have, who knows what's going to happen, you know?
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
so I don't know. Like I always, it just, they don't make sense to me. Like, I don't know. I
It
don't even
is.
know.
It's well, it's fascinating because you bring up, you know, it's the documented phenomena of the spike in sightings during when cultures have periods of like upheaval, turmoil, and let's say like there's a religious uncertainty, like maybe there's a transitioning of a national identity of some kind religiously. UFO sighting spike. And I've always wondered about that as well because there's also some famous ufologists who kind of became into this camp. Um, and I could be mistaken, but John Keel, who is probably one of the most famous and well known, I mean, he wrote, the books, about the Mothman prophecy. And, you know, he was a ufologist who kind of was sucked into this Mothman situation because there were so many UFO sightings at the happening simultaneously around the Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant. And I'm pretty sure that he was of the camp and of the belief, very similar in the same way, to a certain degree when it came to these manifestations of the collective consciousness. And that's what they truly are. And then I always wonder, I was like, does that mean that they're not real? It's like what's real, what's not real, and maybe we are looking outward to the skies or to space, quote unquote, more often, and we're more willing to pay attention to something else when we feel like the thing that we had is no longer as firm, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe it's a case of, oh, we're just paying attention more. Like, how many coins have you walked past on the sidewalk when your pockets are flush? But when you're broke, when I'm broke, I see every shiny thing that's on the ground.
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. I mean, even like I'm sure you're familiar with like the whole like star seed type concept. Even that. Like I've had multiple experiences with alien entities on my own. Like full on experiences. I have. I've had ones with white lion. This is like being that comes to me as like a white lion in dreams, like significant, like very vivid dreams where they would just like not even really say much, but just do like energetic stuff and whatever. But like, who's to say that you're not just like tapping in again to that grand, um, that point in yourself, like God, like God is all knowing, all everything, and there's been infinite amount of experiences. Like maybe we've all been lions once, like who knows?
That'd be
And
rad.
like,
That would be
yeah,
really, that'd be really cool.
yeah, but like maybe that's what that is like people think they're having these like starseed experiences or whatever, but maybe you're just like that same yearning that Jung is talking about with UFOs. Maybe like there's an internal part of you that's like, oh, I need that lion aspect of myself to give me strength or give me something that, and you have these dreams or you have these energetic experiences. It's the same thing as like I've had plenty of experiences where I've tapped into like energy of people where they've come to me who are still alive, you know? So I think if that's possible, then that's some aspect where like somebody's not consciously coming to me, but there's an aspect of themselves coming to me. Then why can't we tap into like, some other aspect of God that we don't even know about, you know?
Yeah, and it's funny because one of my, through sessions with a shamanic Reiki healer that I go see, Sarah Goff, over the years, like one of my power animals is a lion. So I always bring in a lion, like not always, but I try to always remember, like before I go do it, right before I walk on stage and do a show, I'm trying to call in my lion just to like, let's have some fun. You know what I mean? Like, let's be
Yeah.
powerful. Let's be in the moment and um, have confidence and all that kind of stuff. And it's like an energetic boost when I feel like I have the lion like just stalking in a circle around me as my companion as I walk up there, and it is a very powerful thing. I wonder though, when it comes to these multiple experiences that you're talking about, I want to talk about that real quick. I think maybe we can wind down and maybe finish off because I can't believe it's already been almost an hour. The Let's do a quick commercial break real quick, and we come back. We're going to talk with Pete about his alien experiences potentially, and maybe get a little more into this white lion thing because that to me is I'm like the visual image I have of this white lion is like it's like Narnia on crack. You know what I mean? Let's
I can feel them now, actually. It's
yeah.
funny.
Oh, that's really cool. We'll be right back. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer for commercial free interviews. Okay, we're back. I'm talking with Pete, the blue collar spiritualist, about all kinds of great stuff. I feel like I have to drop a seed here because I want to potentially have a future conversation because I was just diving deep into I really love Hermeticism, and I'm trying to learn, and there's so much more about it I need to learn, and especially I was listening to something recently about the difference, or like Hermeticism versus Gnosticism, right? And like, what's the big difference between those two? And we were talking about like the physical body being a prison for Gnostics, and like, okay, and how you know Hermeticism is different than has a different viewpoint than that. So I feel like that could be a really fun conversation sometime in the future. Um, but I'm just gonna like we're just gonna be hanging out at Hot Alien Summer Camp, and I'm just gonna be following you around. Going, come on, let's talk more. Let's talk more about this. But let's talk about let's dig deeper into this white lion and this alien experience. And was it an energy exchange, a visitation? What are we talking about here?
So, I mean, the experience happened in like an astral state, I guess you could say. I was dreaming, but I was aware of like my body. And then I remember like going through like space and different like star clusters. And I all of a sudden I came up and I was like in front of this like it's funny you said Narnia, but like it was like this king, and he was sitting like he was probably like 12 feet tall. He was big, you know, and he was like humanoid, but like lion face, and he was
Oh,
white
okay.
lion. And he just felt like he was sitting on a throne, and I could feel like his aura or his like energy. And it was like his energy like consumed like my energy and like took over my energy. And it almost felt like an ego death experience. And then and that's really it. It wasn't more than that. You know, a lot of it was more like energetic. You know, it's like when you do mushrooms, it's like you can't really bring a lot of it back in a sense. Like you get the concept of it, but it's like it's really the feeling that you can't like describe to people. So then I was like, what does anybody do? I Google everything, and I'm like I'm like, I had a dream with like White Lion King, right? And something came up, and it was like, there's like this king. His name is Devin. That's what they call him or whatever. And he's like the king of the Illyrians, who are like these white lion beings.
The Illyrians?
They're called Lyrians, like Lyria, the
Okay.
constellation. That's where
Okay.
they're from. Lyra. And and then after that, I would whenever I was doing like, you know, I do shamanic healing, I do energy healing, I do mediumship, like sometimes they would just come in. Like I would feel them like come in with a presence, and I would just be aware of them being there, you know, like as a collective, or like I would just see the white lion in my head, and I would know that for some reason they were working with me, you know. And specifically, I feel like they're for, you know, different energies. I feel like come through for different reasons, you know, like um Mother Mary comes to me a lot. Like I feel her presence. It's like when I say that, I don't think people I think people think like, you know, like, oh, like this like light is coming down from the heavens, but really I think it's just like an energy that kind of like steps in with you to kind of do work. You know, I don't know why. It's not like it's really special. I think it's just like when you work as a healer or whatever, it's like you kind of are the vessel, and whatever the person you're working with needs, that type of energy comes through. And I personally associate that energy with Mother Mary. It might be something else, but that's like my interpretation of the energy,
Sure.
you know?
And it's one of the beautiful things about human history, and especially, the advent of writing and storytelling. It's the mystery of the invisible around us. And I think we've been, since the beginning of time, we've been fascinated with the sensations, um, the energy, like different energies, and how do we describe these things that we don't understand, and but we know, but we don't understand. Um,
Yeah.
and whether that's every great story that's ever been told, or every character and every religion that's ever been created, it is their personalities are always very different, whether it's the Greek gods and their different personalities, or the constellations, and everything else. It's like we are trying to identify energy, maybe.
Yeah, that's what
Essentially,
I think it
that's,
is.
yeah, at the end of the day, that's all this all is, right? We're trying to identify, and we're personifying because we understand it better. We can relate to it better when we personify it. And that's why there's all these gods and these great
Yeah, I
stories.
mean, like think about like aliens today are probably the angels of yesterday, you know? And it's like if you think about it, even like demons and stuff like that are just probably our collective unconscious trauma, you know, or like the negative part. Like the angels are the positive part. Oh, we're reaching for God, and this is the form it's coming in, and this is how we're interpreting it. Or like, oh my God, I'm afraid the world's going to end, and it manifests as like this darkness or this demon, you know? And that's why it's like anything you're doing, like even mediumship, like as you're opening up, you're becoming more aware of these energies, and people like associate their own fear as, oh, I'm a demon came while I was meditating or whatever, but it I think it's really just an interpretation of your own shit, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And like urges, desires, and animal self, and you know, your primal nature. Like I love, I whenever I see that, and I don't even remember, that the painting where it's what is it in the cathedral on the ceiling where he's got a finger out and he's trying to
Yeah.
touch like the finger of God or something. Is there anybody like pulling at his feet in that, or is it just him floating? Like,
I'm not sure.
because for me, this the whole human battle is, you know we're reaching up, like, and an angel energy is reaching for us to pull us up. Meanwhile, we've got our like physical, like, whether it's lust or like, this primal nature that we have, hunger, anger, lust, like, grabbing our ankle and trying to pull us, keep us down, right? And so we're kind of like, we're, what is it, what's that rope game where you pull on two sides of the rope, teams,
Tug of war.
tug of war, right? It's like we're in this tug of war. Our consciousness, our spirit, or whatever, is in this tug of war between what we want to be and who we are and who we have been potentially, right?
Yeah.
and and it but we definitely assign it the negative value, right? Like the and it's changing a little bit with, sex positivity and things like that, but it's we definitely judge. We're without maybe even realizing it, how harshly we are judging just our nature in many
Yeah.
aspects, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the nature of this reality is judgment, you know? Like you can't get away from it. That's why you have to kind of transcend the dual. Like everything is, you could go right or you could go left. You know, it's hot or cold. There's always, I think, a judgment in the physical reality. That's what separates us from the non-physical. You know, it's like this is the nature of this reality, you know? But I think the goal is to kind of embody that non-physical reality in the physical, you know? And that allows you to kind of have that grand awareness but in your physical body, you know? That's when things stop being good or bad. You just see them as like the essence, like what
Yeah.
we talked about with the gun. You know, it's like you may want to take our guns away, I may want to keep my guns, but in the essence it's our safety that we're worried about, you know? Like, so you start to see people as you embody that non-physical in the physical, you see people as their non-physical, you know, instead of their physical.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. And it's the same way with conspiracy theorists. At the end of the day, whether, people want to be like, they're whack jobs, they're crazy, they're insane, they're poisoning everyone's mind. It's at the end of the day, they're trying to share information that they think you desperately need because they're worried about you.
Yeah.
And they don't want you being imprisoned or enslaved or controlled, right? At the end of the day, no conspiracy theorist is ever trying to give you information that they think is going to make you, their servant, right?
Yeah, no, no. I mean, I rather have a conspiracy theorist any day than just somebody who's going along with it what everybody says. You know, I always say question everything,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
it's because my brother and I have had a very interesting, sibling relationship since our, my birth. I'm younger, but it's I think it becomes this. And I did a episode many years ago, or a handful of years ago, with him about like the danger of, because he got consumed by the world of conspiracy theories for a minute, and it really it fucked up his life, and in like serious ways. But so which was an interesting conversation to have. But um at the end of the day, whether it's like, a super conservative mother of someone who may host a podcast and be talking right now, trying to talk about abortion to her son, it's because, it's not because she thinks she's better than me or this, you know person who is me that I'm pretending isn't. It's about things they care about, and and things that they think are important, and that they feel compelled to share um because it's for the betterment of everyone, right? And it's not to make them feel better or better than you. I'm better than you. It's we're all just trying to share, right? And we all want to feel safe, and so many of us just don't want to act like we're fucking scared.
Yeah.
Like we talked
Yeah,
about.
no, it's true. But like that's why I think the fear of death, like working on that frees you up a little bit. Because when you have that fear of death, you hold on to everything.
Mm-hmm.
You're attached to it. Like this is what makes me feel safe. I don't give a shit what you say because I need that fear. But if you let that go a little bit, then I feel like it helps with your openness because you're able to move through it a little more freely instead of holding on to that sense of self. Because that's what it is. Like when you finally get over that death, that fear of death, it's the ego that creates that fear. So when you're holding on to that fear, you have that ego still intact and it makes it a lot harder for you to be open to ideas, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because
That's yeah.
that's a whole nother rabbit hole that I've been going down recently is that like the spiritual movement, maybe it's a way of making us more passive, you know? But that's
Huh.
I don't
That's a
I was
whole
thinking
nother. That would be a fun conversation to have. Um,
yeah.
and well, we're going to be seeing each other in a couple months, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
August.
yeah, at Hot Alien Summer Camp.
Yeah.
Tickets are available. Um, and BlueCollarSpiritualist.com is the website, right? It's the hub
Yeah.
for everything, and there's a link
Yeah.
there to your course, your mediumship
Yeah, I
course.
have an online introduction mediumship and Blue Collar Spiritualist on Instagram and TikTok. And I also have a podcast, Spiritual Graffiti on Spotify, Spiritual Graffiti Pod on Instagram.
Just a
And
heads up, the link on your link tree for your podcast uh, might be might need
updating.
oh wait, it says page not found. Let me click on the home thing and see if I can get there. Maybe it's just this, my computer refusing to connect to Spotify, but just double check that just to
Yeah, I'll
make
double
sure.
check it. Thank you.
But okay, and that's available everywhere, it looks like.
Yeah.
Cool. And yeah, so let me throw out your link tree as well. It's if you know Linktree, you know what I'm talking about here. So it's linktr.ee, and it's backslash peaceful pathways 33, and that's a hub to all things Pete.
Cool.
So dude, this has been great.
Yeah,
I was
definitely.
a little discombobulated at the beginning, just needing coffee, having to rearrange studio last second, but this was fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
and I'd love to have you on again. So we'll chat about that because I feel
Yeah,
like
maybe
we
we
didn't
could do
even
one if we're, I don't know what the schedule is going to be like down there, but I'm going to be
100%.
teaching classes. I think we're going to do, I'm going to try, I want to try to do some seances,
Oh,
uh,
hell yes.
maybe demonstration of mediumship, some classes. We'll see. I don't know
Okay.
I think they want me to do some shamanic journey work too. So it should be a good time.
Well, you're going to be a lot more busy than I am
Yeah, whatever. We'll
because
figure it out.
I've got to work for about an hour. And
Yeah, well, you come to my class, we'll hang out, and we'll talk to some dead people.
yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. Everybody, make sure you check out bluecollarspiritualist.com. Take this class, learn mediumship. There's also the YouTube channel, there's TikTok, there's the podcast, Spiritual Graffiti, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
And, this has been fun. I love
yeah,
your perspective, and you're easy to talk to. And I I can see how people really get a lot out of coming to you, and how they can, you know, how you have such a relatable nature when it comes to, because I think that's the difficulty with some of the stuff that we talk about and deal with. It's like some of it's
yeah.
so out there, right?
Well, I think a lot of
Literally.
people gatekeep stuff too, and it's like I want to normalize talking to dead people.
Oh, I
You
love
know,
that.
like that's my
That's a
goal.
shirt.
Is like I know
That's your t-shirt.
I wanted to make that a
Normalize
shirt.
talking to dead people. Please
That
make that t-shirt.
I'm gonna.
Normalize talking to dead people. It's just a black shirt with white print or any
Yeah,
color you want. And it's
yeah,
just, I'm seeing it all in caps. Normalize talking to dead people. Please
yeah. I
make that
gotta work.
shirt.
I'm gonna.
Okay.
I gotta
Okay.
work on
I
that.
mean, I can send you a website right now. It'll take you 5 minutes to build it. Um,
Uh,
you put that bad boy on.
Yeah, no,
Normalize talking to
it's
dead
funny.
people.
I want it like I'm horrible with technology. My wife, I always call my wife my IT guy, and like she does everything for me. And like we were doing T-shirts, and I wanted to make stickers that said "normalize talking to dead people," but T-shirt route is probably better.
Well, bumper sticker would kill it. That would be a killer bumper sticker as
Yeah,
well.
I'm gonna work on
Um,
it after this podcast.
yeah, I mean, holy shit. I mean, yeah, I think you got a winner there.
Yeah,
Well, dude,
thanks.
this has been great.
Yeah, thanks for
Thanks for
having me.
thanks for doing this. I'm so glad we got connected and hooked up, and I look forward to seeing you, and look forward to having more conversations in the future.
Sounds good.